I'm Dr. Stella Gandhi, and I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician. I'm also a virtual primary care physician with Oscar Medical Group. Election day is fast approaching, and one group who are essential to our voting process, both on election day and ahead, are our poll workers. So first off, if you're volunteering as a poll worker, thank you. Second, I'd like to take some time to share some safety tips for how you can minimize your risk of exposure to COVID-19 while volunteering. Tip number 1, bring an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol for yourself, and if possible, provide hand sanitizer at frequently used locations like the registration desk, the voting booth, wherever I voted stickers are dispensed, and at all exits. Also, make sure your hands are completely dry before handling paper ballots or electronic voting equipment to prevent any unintended damage. Also, tip number 2, wash your hands as frequently as possible and make sure to use soap and water, and to do so for at least 20 seconds. A helpful tip is to sing the happy birthday song to make sure that you are washing your hands for an appropriate amount of time. Tip number 3, cover your cough and sneezes using a tissue or the inside of your elbow. Any used tissues should be thrown away immediately, and make sure you wash your hands or use hand sanitizer afterwards. Tip number 4, wear your mask the entire time, and encourage or require voters at the polling site to do the same. Remember, babies and children under the age of 2 should not be wearing masks. Tip number 5, if you're asking voters to remove their masks for identification purposes, make sure to provide hand sanitizer so voters can sanitize their hands immediately after removing their mask. Tip number 6, if your state requires voters to show their ID, ask voters to hold up their IDs in a visible way to minimize contact, or ask voters to place their ID in a neutral area so the ID doesn't need to be passed back and forth. And lastly, to minimize talking to the extent possible, post signs in highly visible locations to guide voters through the voting process. Remind them of protective measures like social distancing, wearing a mask, sanitizing their hands, and clearly mark points of entry and exit. You can find more tips for minimizing the risk for yourself and at the polling site on the CDC website. Voting is an essential part of our democratic process. Thank you again for volunteering.